This is Around the League from UGAsports.com. I am Dane Young alongside Brent Rollins and the College Football Hall of Famer Jim Donnan. He's the former Georgia head coach. This is the show where we talk about each team in the SEC, and this is our wrap-up for the season, as we are a show that airs during the college football season, so we'll be back potentially next year for that. We haven't really discussed SEC football, us three together, since the rivalry week around Thanksgiving. So we want to kind of give a wrap up of the coaching carousel and the bowl games where each team stands. Just overall, though, Coach, I know you've been excited for the season that was Georgia and Alabama leading the way, but the conference, I thought, had some surprises and a strong amount of talent in the league.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great year for football after COVID. It was just good to see the fans in the stands and, just all the pomp and pageantry that's involved with the game. It just doesn't seem like football the way we were doing it with COVID. And you can see the little rust on the players too. I mean, early on, fundamentally, they just weren't as sound the last year and a half. But having spring practice certainly helped. But I really can't reflect much on the season because I'm looking so forward to these bowl games and obviously the top two games that we're going to talk about. So it's going to be a good show, and I'm glad that Connor is broadcasting our show like they always do, and have one last show to kind of bring out the last of the year and get ready for next year.
We are presented by Connor Grading and Landscaping. Now, one thing I would tell you, if you like the film reviews that Brent and I do, the Film Don't Lie, that is continuing in the off season. So maybe we'll sneak Coach on one of those at some point to really show us what some X's and O's look like, because would know way better than me. So let's start with this. Let's just begin with the SEC East. And Brent, Georgia, 12-1. 8-0 in the conference in the regular season, the one loss in the SEC championship to Alabama. The Bulldogs playing Michigan in the Orange Bowl coming up. Dan Lanning did take the Oregon job. Will Muschamp, at some point, he's not Dan Lanning coaching in the Orange Bowl, but Will Muschamp's going to move into an elevated role. Overall, Georgia, thoughts on the Bulldogs?
12-1 in the playoff. Before the season, if you said, hey, that's what we have, you take that all day, every day. You don't now the ending, obviously you don't feel as good about it. You had the chance to sort of put your foot on Alabama's throat a little bit and push them out of the playoff for the most part, but you didn't get it done. But now you get a second chance. You get a couple weeks to get healthy, and you have a really interesting, just physical football game, really true old school, just two physical football teams going at each other in the first playoff game.
Yeah, you made that exactly right. If we were talking about college basketball and you lose in the conference championship game, then you go into the tournament, you still got a great shot. A lot of teams win the national championship with a loss in the basketball tournament. But I do have some interesting news that I got right before we got on the air. Coach Smart is going to bring in Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel to help us show how to beat Michigan as analysts here over the next couple of weeks. No, they're not going. He's not going to do that. But I thought that's a little funny deal. But they do know how to beat Michigan, that's for sure. But it's going to be a physical game, and everybody's looking forward to it over here just to get the bad taste out of the mouth. But tremendous recruiting year for Georgia, just really outstanding. And it's going to be a great chance to look at some of these young players in practice. That's the one thing that I would say we'll go on to. But when you get into a bowl, you got 14 or 15 extra days to practice that you wouldn't have if you weren't playing in a bowl. And what that does for you is get you a chance to focus on the game itself, but also keep the younger guys out there and do some reps and work on fundamentals that they maybe hadn't had a chance to because they were always a scout team back in the fall. And it gives them a lot of juice too because the major coaches are looking at them instead of the scout team guys, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of catapult into the spring, knowing exactly what those kids have, how they've developed between September and December. So all these bowl games are important to the teams, regardless if you're, South Carolina playing in one. I mean, that's 15 extra practices for them. So whereas maybe a team like Florida, they got these extra practices, but they don't really have. They have just a coaching staff that's kind of in disarray, and they got people in that transfer portal and all that. So let's go on to the next one.
Well, Brent, did you have any wrap-up thoughts on Georgia? Because I know Coach and I will get that before Michigan for UGA Sports Live next week.
Yeah, the biggest thing, they finished with a great recruiting class. Them, A&M, Bama, just head and shoulders above everyone else. And I think that just restocking the talent where it needs to be restocked. Depth, you fill depth where you need to fill it.
Second in the SEC East, the Kentucky Wildcats, undefeated for much of the season, as we mentioned on this show. I did probably too much. In the Verbo Citrus Bowl against Iowa, Kentucky, Brent 9-3 in overall in their schedule, 5-3 in the SEC. Most of that, those losses coming late. Interesting thing with them, Brad White, defensive coordinator, was being pursued by LSU, according to many reports, and he's staying at Kentucky.
Yeah, he's staying in Kentucky, and they actually finished, according to the Rivals rankings, they were fourth in the conference in terms of ranking, 10th overall, I think it was, and got a top 30 kid offensive lineman from Indiana. So finishing and taking the momentum that they got during the season, where at one point obviously they were undefeated coming into Athens, and then doing something with it in the recruiting trail. Now, obviously, they didn't finish like they would have, but at least from the bowl game perspective, like you get a very interesting matchup to where you might be, if you're the first one to 20 points, you're probably going to be the victor in this game. But yes, it's one where I think Kentucky overall, and I think the other thing about Kentucky from a recruiting perspective, and this is always fascinating to me, is where teams get it. And we'll talk about the Florida thing in a little bit, but they got players from Alabama, Michigan, Kansas, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Mississippi, and Texas. Like that's, when have you ever thought that Kentucky was a sort of national brand in terms of getting players from all over the country? And they did it this year.
Are you talking about basketball? No, I've got to give Stoops a lot of credit. I mean, he's parlayed this job into a big-time contract. He's won just enough to make the people up there feel comfortable about him. He's had his name up for some other jobs, and he's done a really good job of using that program to his advantage in a lot of different ways. But I think the improvement they made offensively this year, bringing in the quarterback from Penn State and, showing that they can beat the teams they're supposed to beat. They had the other one upset of Florida, but it ended up not being an upset after you saw what Florida did. But I would just say that this game here is going to boil down to probably take about 2 hours to play. I mean, if you count the halftime, it's going to be, just power ball by both teams. The one thing that you got with Kentucky, a little bit better passing quarterback. So, but Citrus Bowl is always a good, fun bowl. And it's one of the best ones I ever went to. But what I would tell both these teams is you've got to really work on letting your kids rest some, because every day after practice, okay, we're going to Disney World. After practice, okay, we're going to SeaWorld. After practice, we're going to – I mean, they got you doing something every day, and you're standing up and your legs are tired. And, I mean, I was a lot younger when we played in it, but my ass was dragging that by the time we played, because I was trying to keep up with my children and their children and everybody else. I'm just telling you, it's a different bowl game. If I know that, I think you guys probably been to Disney World when you weren't coaching football or covering it. And it's just all the events are really overwhelming, the hospitality. But you got to be really careful that your team isn't too tired. That's what I would warn them about.
What's your favorite ride at Disney World, Coach? Do you have one?
Oh, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I like to go down deep, man.
I love it. I'm a Splash Mountain guy myself.
I like the fast ones too, but I just want to give you a little Jules Verne there and let you know. But I really have always enjoyed taking my kids there. I mean, I remember my son was in a stroller, and then my two girls, and they were just mad at me because I was always strolling him around. But it was fun to get him there. And that was 1973, and I can remember the place hadn't changed that much. It's great. It's awesome. Just then I took my granddaughter one time and I had some VIP things because I worked with ESPN, and we actually got to go in the room there with all the characters, and she got to interact with them. And then they actually took her to meet some of the other people, and it was just a VIP thing she'll never forget.
That's
Throwing
awesome.
those Disney credentials around. Do you have a favorite ride, Brent?
I mean, Splash and Space Mountain there. I think some of the newer ones, like the Tower of Terror at the other places, the other sort of parks that are part of it.
Yeah.
I like those as well. But I will say this: the last time we went, it was in, I think, June, at some point in June, and it wasn't like the smiles that everybody talked about. It was a lot of parents who were just like doing this and sweating like crazy and not really enjoying themselves.
First time I ever went, I was with two of my buddies, and we're just talking. I mean, I was in college, I think. We're talking, and we were like, "Man, I wonder how much it'd cost to bring a family of 4 here for a week." And no lie, this guy in front of me turns around, and he says, $5,000. I remember the way he said that to this day. All right, back on track here.
Have that prime rib eating contest, which guy can eat the most prime rib, from each team. It's just really ridiculous to see those guys slopping the hogs.
Oh, Arkansas should have been in it. We'll get to them in a few minutes. All right, so in the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl, it is Tennessee versus Purdue. Tennessee 7-5 overall on the season, 4-4 in the conference. Probably, Brent, I would say overperforming based on where the roster was preseason.
Oh, yeah, and a lot of momentum, a lot of positive momentum. You got Hendon Hooker, who's already said he's coming back, and that's really it. That was, to me, the biggest thing from a recruiting perspective. They did well in recruiting overall. I think 11th overall in the country, 5th in the SEC. But getting the quarterback back and a guy that you felt comfortable with and played well with when he did play, that was your biggest recruit.
Yeah, Tennessee's good news and bad news. Good news is they're getting to play in a bowl, and they don't have any idea about what their sanctions are going to be, and that's going to be the bad news, because that's going to hit them here sometime between now and next season. We'll find out what. But you got to give kudos to two coaches, to me, that just wore out the transfer portal. Mel Tucker at Michigan State and Josh Heupel at Tennessee just really took advantage of the transfer portal and blended their skills and their skill set into their programs and catapulted them into some really good wins. And I think we're going to see that with Florida here. We'll talk about them in a minute, but the transfer portal is like free agency. I mean, it just really is out there. And if you lose some players this year, you can actually bring 7 more in. So a team could ostensibly bring 32 new players in, the 25 recruits and 7 transfer people, but you can't bring in 32 recruits unless you have 7 transfers. So leave your place. So it's going to be an interesting scenario, but I think this game here is going to be like 90-88. I mean, Purdue has a hard time stopping people. Tennessee does too. They both got really high-powered offenses, and it could be, really could be a game in the 60s. It could be
fun to watch, at least.
The spoiler makers, always fun. Next up, Missouri, 6-6 overall, 3-5 in the conference. The Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl against Army, a team that I don't think many people enjoy playing, Brent, especially in postseason.
Yes, I mean, think about the bowl. You play a bowl game, and I got to go practice against the triple option. But still, yet for Missouri, interesting year for them, kind of just barely getting to bowl eligibility. And then from a recruiting perspective, I've seen some places, some of the various recruiting sites have them as high as like 4th in the conference, but with Rivals had them 9th in the conference. But the biggest thing is if they get the quarterback and the receiver right, if Sam Horn, who's out of Collins Hill, that throwing to Travis Hunter all year, and then Luther Burden, if those two guys become big time players for them, your recruiting class is made, and you actually now you have something to build upon and move forward with, and Drinkwitz can stay there and actually keep some of that momentum that he got last year that kind of died off a little bit this year, get that momentum back.
Yeah, I was going to mention Sam Horn. I think he's a kind of a diamond in the rough that people maybe missed on around different places, but the guy is a winner, and he did a good job of distributing the ball. But the thing about playing in a bowl game, if you're going to play against a triple option team, you either play them the first game of the year or in a bowl where you got more time to prepare, or before an open date or something, because you just can't get your scout team operating like you need to, and your players reacting to it. Army's coming off a downer. I mean, you can't have anything worse in your career than to lose to Navy. I mean, you talk about life or death. That game, Army's kind of had things going for them here lately, but they lost a heartbreaker to Navy, and Army's been an up and down team all year, kind of self-destructed. We watched them play against Wake Forest. It was like 60-57 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just ugly game on both sides defensively. So I think Drinkwitz is either really good or really bad when they coach. I mean, they have some really good games, and then some things they do, I just don't even think they're watching the film. So they better get ready and have a plan against this triple option, because as you've talked about and I've talked about, you're not going to get but 8 or 9 possessions, because they're not going to give you the ball any. Even if you play good, if it's 4th down and less than 1 or 2, they're going for it. I don't care where they are. So that's 2 more minutes off the clock, 3 more minutes. But I think Army's defense is just so bad against the pass. If they do any good at all, Missouri can run the ball with Bailey. If they can run it like they normally can, I think they can really hurt them passing the ball.
One thing I want to mention from the coaching staff standpoint, and not necessarily coordinators, but when Rhett Lashley got the head coaching job at SMU, and Brent, you write about Miami for their rival site. I covered Rhett Lashley when he was on Auburn staff in the Gus Malzahn era. That Malzahn tree and all those guys that work together, it's kind of spreading out a bit more as the years go by. And so Missouri lost a few people in their support staff over to SMU. And if Rhett Lashley does well, I think that probably continues, and they're having to kind of find people from elsewhere. But that's where Eli Drinkwitz comes from, is that whole Malzahn. He went over to App State, but there's going to be some replacing to do there.
Yep.
Next up, we have, this is a fun one, the Duke's Mayo Bowl, which they're so good at social media. South Carolina, 6-6 overall in the year, 3-5 in the SEC, going up against North Carolina. It is a Beamer against Mac Brown, so there's a lot of college football royalty in terms of the families in this game, Brent.
Yeah, and you also you can think about what Shane Beamer, he's already, from a recruiting perspective, already feels like a winner, because he got Spencer Rattler that's coming from Oklahoma to be there, kind of using those Oklahoma ties that he had. But, you think about South Carolina, while they had a very positive year and should feel good about themselves, hey, we got a quarterback. When you look at some of their losses to Georgia, Tennessee, A&M, and Clemson, they lost by 27, 25, 30, and 30. Like it's, hey, we're okay here, but we're a big time notch below where we need to be to compete in the upper echelon. Maybe you get the quarterback and, some more of, I think he's going to keep using the transfer portal more so than the recruiting part of it. But it's going to be a tough sledding, but this game will be fun. I think North Carolina won the last time the two of them played a couple years back. So, good little or close state border rival.
Yeah, the thing about North Carolina, defensively, they lost so many games at the end of the game. And the NC State game's got to really stick in their crawl. But and you got to give State credit for coming back. But I think the big key for South Carolina, who's going to play quarterback, this Brown kid that has entered the portal. I don't know if he's going to play in the game or not, but he, then that leaves them Nolan and maybe Luke. Maybe Doty can play in the game. I don't know. He had a hurt leg. I don't know if he's out for the year. But that, when they are bad on offense, they're really bad. Like 11 yards going in the fourth quarter against Texas A&M, and it's going to be a game where a lot of emotion. North Carolina and South Carolina, and Spencer Rattler. I mean, that's a good pickup, but we're not playing 7-on-7. He's a 7-on-7 quarterback. He's a guy that delivers the ball on time, and you got good protection. He's good. But if protection breaks down on Spencer Rattler, he's history. I mean, I've watched him for 2 years, and that's why Williams took over the job. They're going to have to get some kids in the transfer portal to protect him. If he gets protected, he can throw the football, and he really knows how to deliver it. But I'm telling you now, unless their offensive line improves, they can bring Tom Brady in there, and it's not going to make any difference. I'm telling you, that's going to be the real key for them, is get some old linemen to help these quarterbacks out. Their defense took a lot of chances this year, and I don't know if North Carolina's quarterback is going to play or not. I hadn't seen where he opted out, but it's up for grabs if he does. But who the quarterback's going to be for both teams is really going to have a lot to do with who wins this game.
If If you would have told me that Florida would have ended up at 6-6 overall, 2-6 in the league after almost beating Alabama and competing really hard in that game, I would have told you I thought you were crazy. The Gators do get bowl eligible barely after beating Florida State. The Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl versus UCF, which is a mouthful. And I know that Florida Gators do not want to lose to UCF because that is just bragging rights in the state. Dan Mullen fired, Billy Napier hired. Interim coach, obviously, for the bowl. Still working out what Napier's staff's going to look like, but transition about as strong as it gets, Brent.
Yeah, and I think you saw, I think it was yesterday, maybe yesterday, the day before, that Emory Jones said he was going in the portal. But I think I saw where he said he's going to play in the game, but then go into the portal. I don't know. Maybe I misread that, but I thought that was odd when I did read that. But like Coach said, a lot of these games are going to be, and even when you look later, like LSU or A&M, who's going to play quarterback? For both of these teams, because I think Dylan Gabriel also put his name in the portal for UCF. So who's going to play QB? Now, the interesting part with Florida, and you guys had fun last night on the UGA Sports Live talking about the recruiting stuff. And I know I heard Dave mention that Marshall was at one point in time ahead of them.
Oh, for a good long while.
Yes. I think they're maybe one spot behind them now. But by the way, 20 spots, like 25 spots ahead of them, also West Virginia. So West Virginia and Marshall, the two Division I programs in the state of West Virginia, which Coach knows well and good how many Division I players exist in that state. It's usually about 0. If it's 5, it's like the biggest year in the history of the state. So you're getting teams that don't recruit at all in their own state. And you can't really, for that matter. And they're way ahead of Florida in the recruiting perspective. But I think Napier getting the two that he got, getting the 2 kids that he got, Wilson and James there. At least something, at least positive, because if the coaching change is not made, you're probably not getting those kids, and it's a little something positive to build on. But like Coach said, like, and all the transition with this, like if you're a coach, what are you even watching in this game? You're like, all right, who wants to fight? Who wants to be here? Who wants to be a Florida Gator? That's probably all you're watching.
Yeah, here's the thing about this game. Statewide pride. Everybody wants UCF to beat Florida. I mean, Florida's already played South Florida this year and FAU, and they played Florida State. So if they beat UCF, they'll have the quadruple quinella of beating all 4 teams in the state of Florida except Miami. So that's a pretty good year for Florida. But on the other hand, they lost about 5 or 6 more to other people. So the bottom line right now for the Florida Gators fans and everybody else, they will lead the Guinness Book of Records for the transfer portal. They might have 30. I mean, they've only signed like 10 guys, so they'll probably have 25, maybe 20 to 25 kids in the transfer. Because if you look at it, and I'm a good player at a team that's, a MAC team, and nothing wrong with a MAC and you got a chance to go play in the SEC and see that you might could start for a team like that, but you're a pretty good player. That's going to be a really good draw. I think Florida will have a better roster when they start fall camp than they had when they ended the season. I just really believe they will because of the transfer portal. If you get about 15 really good athletes that have played 2 or 3 years of college football and you got a chance to scan the country to pick them up, look at what Michigan State did with it. I mean, it's possible to happen. But as far as this game, I know Gus Malzahn, they're fired up. I mean, they got quarterback problems. Dylan Gabriel got hurt, and they've had trouble all year. But I think they're 7-5. But it's going to be the Gasparilla Bowl over there in Tampa. And I know that the AD at Florida told the bowl people, we want to play a bowl, and we want to play before Christmas, and we want to get our ass out of there and get going with a new staff.
It makes sense.
Coach, I think what you're saying is at Florida's spring game, they're going to have players shaking hands and introducing themselves to each other in the huddle.
That'd be good. Yeah. Maybe have some guys from Canada speaking French too, and bring those guys in there.
One last team to talk about in the SEC East, the only SEC team not going to a bowl game. Vanderbilt 2-10 overall, 0-8 in the league, kind of expected. Tough road to hoe for Clark Lee. They are doing some facility upgrades, which I think is helpful for Vandy, but not too much to remark on in terms of SEC competitiveness.
No, they got competitive at least towards the end of the year, a little bit, to where they almost won a game or two. But Yeah, it's going to be a 2 or 3 year process at least. The talent level was so bad that it's going to take a while for them to another recruiting class or two to really get back to being league caliber competent in the league.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about it from a coaching perspective, watching their team, your film shows you what your team is. They make some dramatic improvement as far as just being really bad to being bad. You know what I mean? They're just bad enough that you can't stop anybody. But just watching them against Georgia and then watch them in the year against Tennessee and Kentucky. I mean, they made some really good improvement fundamentally, and the guy's a good coach. They just got to get some players. I mean, they're really going uphill trying to compete as it is, but with the player deficiencies, it's rough. But I'll give them credit for you measure success in degrees. Success for Georgia is winning every game. For Vanderbilt is making some improvement where you can be 500, and I think they got a chance to do that under this guy. I really do like his fundamentals and his approach, and he's a Vanderbilt guy. I mean, he loves that school, and he's going to do everything he can. And a lot of times when you're a guy that has been there, the people have a tendency to rally around you a little more. You got some buddies that have graduated with you now are doctors and lawyers and everything, got a lot of money. So, but it's an arms race. There's no question about it. Facility wise, you walk into that stadium, I mean, it just doesn't reek of college football. I mean, it's just a downer when you go in the stadium. So they got to do something about the college atmosphere there.
Before we transition over to the SEC West in the second half of our show, I do want to tell you about our friends at Connor Grading and Landscaping. And I've got 2 young kids, and so we're at the time of year that they're not playing outside quite as much because it's so cold once they get home from school and babysitter and whatnot. So I'm surveying the perimeter. I'm looking right now what in my yard can be improved. So that way, when we get to spring, we're spending so much time outside that this is exactly like we need it to be. So maybe that's grass, maybe that's moving a little bit of earth, maybe that's creating a new feature in your backyard. Connor Grading and Landscaping can help you with that. They're a company based out of Monroe, Georgia. They really do a great job. What I love is the creativity that they have. If you go to their website, connorgrading.com, you can see some of the work they've done, whether it's grading or landscaping. They do these paver patios, different kinds of patios that you've seen. The fire pit's really cool for this time of year if you want to get that in before that cold snap hits in January and February here in Georgia. So just go check out what they have going on. And you don't have to hear about it from me because they've worked at Brent Rollins' house. So Brent, I know you said that they haven't been out there in a second, and so maybe they need to get back out there to fix what you've messed up.
Yeah, that's what it is. They had such a great job initially, and then I've kind of screwed it up over my own just sheer laziness and or inability to to take care of things. But I'm doing okay. It still looks.
It's been football
solid.
season. You've been busy.
Solid. Yes, spring it gets back into shape.
I look at this with dry creek beds and I think, oh man, that's got some Augusta National qualities to it. All I'm saying is check them out, Connor Grading and Landscaping. And look, if Jim Donnan's saying that these are the people you need to have come work on your yard, he wouldn't lie to you. He hasn't yet.
Hey, I feel good about just the fact that the care that you get after you start up with them. Good follow up. Listening to Brent talk about the interaction. And that's what you need because, when you get something finished on your yard, it's going to take some follow-up, because everybody knows the weather around here. You don't know how it's going to react to different weather conditions. And Connor's they're a lifetime deal for you. They're going to make it right.
ConnorGrading.com. Support the people that support us. They've supported around the league since day one this season, and we look forward to continuing our relationship and friendship with the folks over at Connor Grading and Landscaping. All right, SEC West time. We'll get Coach to start on all of these. Alabama 12-1 on the season, 7-1 in the conference, winning the SEC against Georgia, losing the one game to Texas A&M, the Goodyear Cotton Bowl in the college football playoff against Cincinnati.
Yeah, you got to give Alabama a lot of credit. I mean, they did what they needed to beat Georgia. I think one big part of the game was everybody talks about why didn't Georgia rush the passer as good. They played that game against Auburn, and it looked like their offensive lineman couldn't hear. I mean, they heard a lot better against Georgia. They didn't see anybody missing on the speed rush because of snap count, and they did a good job with their alignment with their line. Brenda talked about that. But the big thing is, they played up to their capabilities, and their defense was bend and don't break. Y'all have broken that down on film, don't lie. But they're going against a tough opponent. Cincinnati's got good corners. They really believe in each other. They haven't lost a game since they lost on the last play to Georgia on the field goal. And they got to kind of burr in their saddle to try to prove they can compete with the big boys. I don't know that they're going to be able to. It's just going to be a case of Bryce Young winning the Heisman. We don't know if it's a jinx, but it's going to be different without Mechie. Number 8, not in the game. It takes away your underneath routes, a lot of things they do, and sure, they'll work on it. But you take a premium guy away from your quarterback like that, it takes a lot out of you. But it'll be a good contest. Cincinnati's going to play them tough, I think.
And it'll be a great game for whoever, if Alabama does get by Cincinnati, which, Vegas and then most everyone thinks that they will, it'll be a great game for, hey, maybe this is something that we can do, whoever, comes out of the Georgia-Michigan game, because they have great DBs like Sauce Gardner and Bryant on the other side. Maybe they do the whole Belichickian style and say, hey, we're going to double Jamison Williams, and then Sauce Gardner's going to play on an island on the other side. Maybe that works. Who knows what they do, but they have good defensive players. They have NFL guys. I mean, they have 7, 8 guys who are probably going to get drafted. So it's not like they don't have talent at Cincinnati. And it's going to be a great game to watch. But Bama, they got the best player. The best player carried them the entirety of the season. And if he wasn't the best player, they could have had probably 2, 3 losses. But he was just that good.
Probably going to go against the best quarterback that they've played against as far as this kid. Wouldn't you say to this point? That
with Ritter, yeah, I mean, and he the best combination of the running and throwing part of it. I mean, he's a little bit inconsistent as a passer, but they do some things offensively that will make Alabama make choices defensively, and where you kind of can't be right as a defense because of the way they use the quarterback in the.
But Ole Miss 10-2. 6-2 in the SEC. Jeff Levy going off to Oklahoma, coaching this game. Matt Corral playing in the game. So it's Baylor versus Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, it's a big matchup for Levy calling the plays, coming back. Baylor's got a really good situation at quarterback now because they got a guy that played some when their best guy was out with a hamstring, and it really hurt them against some of these teams. Baylor's defense matchup, Aranda knows what to do in this game because he's played against, Ole Miss before last year when he was at LSU. So it's going to be a game where you can separate how you're going to play a different conference, because everybody's talking about conference pride. But I think this is a great matchup, don't you, Brent?
I do. And like I said, Aranda's a great coach. And Corral playing in the game, I think, is pretty special and pretty cool just because of how he talked about, being there. But looking at, I was just kind of doing some research on the rivals quarterbacks that sign with teams over the past decade.
This
in the rivals top 100. 70% of those guys have transferred away. And of the 65, there's like 65, I think, that could have played 4 years, that have their time frame has been 4 years. Five quarterbacks have played 4 years at the school they signed with. Matt Corral is one of those. And, some of the early stuff, and then he was rotating a little bit with Rice Plumlee before Lane took the job, and then 2 great years under Lane Kiffin. Just great for the kid. Great to see them moving on. And then, they just had a phenomenal year. And outside of a couple 4th downs against Alabama, their season and then one loss that they could have been in a whole nother place for a great season that they've had.
In the world of the coaching carousel, I think that both Dave Aranda and Lane Kiffin will be names that continue to pop up for whenever the biggest of the big boy jobs come open. Because they're both at great jobs now. So I'm not disparaging Baylor and Ole Miss, but what I'm saying is they're next, and their agents know it.
And you give them credit for doing a good job, but it wasn't exactly like they came into teams without any players.
Sure.
You look at what Matt Luke left him there. I mean, it's pretty nice to have a guy like Corral there. And the biggest thing that they were able to do over the last 3 years, though, the defensive nemesis that has plagued Ole Miss, they got a lot better offense on offense in some ways, but defense is where they made the big jump. And, they didn't have to just outscore people. I mean, some of their wins were in tight fit ball games where it was a 4-score game, like against Tennessee. And it just but their defense let them down against Arkansas, but stopped the 2-point play.
Oh, you gave me the transition. Arkansas 8-4 overall on their season, 4-4 in the conference in the Outback Bowl against Penn State. That's going to be a hard hitting game, Coach. 2 physical teams.
Right. I mean, you look at Sam Pittman, what he's done. I mean, they won the first 4, then they lost their next 4, then they won their next 4. So they're 8-4. Nobody would have thought 2 years ago when he took over the program that they would get that many wins. Unfortunately, they didn't get to play a bowl last year because of COVID. I think the team they're playing couldn't play or something. But the main thing here is the transition has been really good. Now Arkansas kids stay in the state. They've got a name around the conference. They're getting some kids out of state that maybe some of the in-state schools that they're recruiting against didn't take, but they can get them. Everything's pointing good for them. I mean, I think they're going against a solid team. We'll see. Penn State's had a lot of upheaval. They've lost a couple of coordinators. Brent Pry got the Virginia Tech job, and they're bringing Manny Diaz in. One thing you hope if I'm Coach Pittman is that Manny will call it for the game because they won't know the defense yet. They'll be running some of his stuff instead of Penn State. I wouldn't think they'd let him call that game yet, but sometimes they do. But he'll do a good job up there. He's a good defensive coach. So, but overall, it's a good matchup for both teams. 2 very physical teams.
Yeah, and Arkansas, it's good to finish that season. You've had such positive momentum within the season. You slipped a little bit in the middle, but it's good to finish the season on a positive note. You've already got Jaden Hazelwood in the transfer portal. Kind of those former Georgia recruiting ties that Sam Pittman had, and seeing some of those players come back, even though he was, even though he never went to Georgia, but he was still heavily recruited by Georgia. But that, and then also for them, just getting players from, like you said, Coach, the state of Arkansas. Like I think I saw over half of their players were from the state of Arkansas in the recruiting class that they just had, and they need that, and they need that momentum, and it's good. And he's just doing a great job, and you can't ask anything more than what he's done. He just keeps the QB around, and you keep building up because it's what 2 years removed from 0-10.
And the other thing that you watch for, and we haven't talked about, is the opt-outs. Like Burks has opted out. Their best player is not going to play. So it's going to be a little difficult to match up with anybody without a guy you get the ball to that makes all the big plays. So they got the running game going and all, but he's a huge force in their team. He was hurt. You could tell a lot of difference in the way they play. But the big thing, they've got time to prepare for that and see how it'll go without Burks. But that's a big loss for them.
Bit of a roller coaster of emotions for Texas A&M. 8-4 overall in its season, 4-4 in the league. Losing Mike Elko, defensive coordinator, to Duke, that head coaching job. Losing Zach Calzada to the transfer portal. Pick up Jake Johnson in recruiting, and so maybe there's some buzz that maybe Max is on his way to join as well, the former LSU quarterback. We'll see if that comes to pass. All while, Tax Slayer Gator Bowl versus Wake Forest.
Yeah, who's going to play QB?
Yeah, I think talking to some of the people out at Texas A&M, I think they're going to play the guy that started the season. He looks like he can play. He hurt his leg, and he won. What's his name?
Haynes King.
Haynes King. He was a highly recruited kid, and he's going to go at quarterback. I think Calzada saw the writing on the wall with Max Johnson coming in there, which it looks like it's what's going to happen. And I guess those two will fight it out. But, there's a really high for this A&M program. They're recruiting nationally ranked 1 or 2, getting some players like maybe get the top 2 players Florida, the Jamie effect. I don't care where he's recruiting. That guy can get players now. He's recruited the top 2 players out of Florida at A&M. I mean, I guess he told them that the Gulf of Mexico was close to there or something. I don't know how he did it, but just an unbelievable job. But on the other hand, just to downward trend with their team this year. They lost 4 games, 3 of them to play the teams against that were in their second year in the program. When you've got a 4-year head start and everything at Texas A&M, and then they lost the last game to a team that was just in upheaval. The coach was fired. The staff was arguing with each other. They had guys quitting. It was just a terrible loss. And but you watch Jimbo. I mean, you'd think he was a national champion. And I like the way he's been positive and all, but he needs to go take a self-appraisal with that offense that they're running. I know they got too many good players not to move the ball, particularly in the first half. They're terrible in the first half this year. And you got all week to make those plans, and then they adjust at halftime pretty good. But isn't that right, Brent? The first half been terrible.
Yeah, outside of one game, one very important game.
Oh, yeah, that one counts for sure.
Against Alabama, that was, ended up being one for them. But like you said, all the positives, like all these positive, hey, we got a coach who we like and who's on a contract for 10 years or something like that. And you're recruiting at a level you've never recruited at in your program's history, yet you're not seeing the results on the field. Now, I do think like if Max does end up there, which I would assume given that Jake signed there, that's highly likely. I see him being a very steady hand for that team, but still yet Spiller's going to go to the draft. Weidermeyer's graduating. Like there's a lot of there's a lot of playmakers that they're losing. And then Anaya Smith, I think, will be in the draft. So, yes, you bring in the quarterback you like, and you're bringing in all this talent from a recruiting perspective, but then you lose your playmaker. So can you get it right? Can you get it settled? And can you go actually truly compete for the West? And they really haven't done that yet.
And going against a team that would have been funny to see if Elko would have stayed there. He's going against his old team at Wake Forest, so that would have been fun. But Wake Forest can move the ball now. I mean, they use the super senior deal to the max. I mean, just about their whole team is super senior. What I'm saying is 3 of them probably graduating from law school this year after the game.
So, Coach, one question, though. Did you ever recruit an international player?
Sure.
Because I saw where they signed a tight end from Sweden, like 6'6" kid from Sweden, it said.
Was his name Ole Missen? I come from Sweden. Ole Missen. But I went to Mexico one time and talked to some people down in Mexico about a kicker. And it was fun. I mean, kidding, but I went there. I also went to Canada and got some players.
There you go.
You mentioned a quarterback.
I've been everywhere, man.
Brent, you mentioned quarterbacks that A&M might like. Quarterback that Steve Spurrier said he liked that I like personally is over at Mississippi State. The Bulldogs 7-5 regular season, 4-4 in the conference. Liberty Bowl against Texas Tech. Coach, it's the Leach Bowl, if you will.
Yeah, old Leach is going to go in there asking for that money back that he didn't get. He's still talking about that. I don't know how long he's been gone, but he thinks they still owe him whatever it is. So we'll see how that goes. But it does have a little intrigue, the fact that they're playing against another team that's got a staff that's in transit. Their coach got fired and they're bringing in a new guy, and it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. It's a very difficult thing. We mentioned it before, but you're out there coaching, and the new coach is probably watching you, and you probably don't have a job, and you're trying to get a job in between getting ready for the bowl. And the thing about Mississippi State, I mean, they really played good the first half against Ole Miss. The rain was bad. They dropped those 3 plays that would have put them ahead. I mean, they just played terrible in the second half. But Will Rogers, this is kind of game where he can go out there. Texas Tech can give you – I mean, if they play good on defense, they can give up 35 on a good day. So I look for them to really – if you think somebody's got some venom in his veins, it'll be Mike Leach against Texas Tech.
That he will not slow down. And what's amazing about Mississippi State right now is they didn't slow down in recruiting. They signed, according to the Rivals rankings, they signed 7 4-star players. That was the most. They did that in Ole Miss. That was the most in 2018. I mean,
I think somebody said the Pirate was recruiting and Lane was doing interviews.
But it'll be a fun game. And
The
they got
Beamer strategy.
Yes, they got 14 of their 22 signees from the state of Mississippi. So, and outside of the Alabama game, they played everyone tough. And, even the games they lost, it was a close game. So,
Yeah,
Pirates got same things rolling.
Memphis game, you take that Memphis game away. I mean, they're 8-4. I mean, he's made dramatic improvement down there. Losing some guys to the transfer portal kind of surprised me. Some of them that are leaving, but you're either with this guy or he's just he's very set in his way he does things, and there's no question that when you look at the West and you look at the way Sam Pittman has done, the way he's done, the way Coach Kiffin has done right there in the second year, all three of them beat A&M.
Auburn trying to find some answers, 6-6 in the league, 3-5 in the league, 6-6 overall. What was it? 3 weeks into the season, got rid of the wide receivers coach. Now replacing Mike Bobo. It sounds like Austin Davis from the Seattle Seahawks will be coming in as the offensive coordinator for Brian Harsin. Bowl game staying in state. The Ticket Smarter Birmingham Bowl against Houston.
It'll be interesting to see how many people actually come to that game. That's a big stadium. I don't know if they're going to play in a new UAB stadium or play in the old stadium. But Brian Harsin's trying to put lipstick on a pig about this program, talking about the recruiting. Sure, they finished good and everything, but what did they finish in the league as far as recruiting?
12th,
what was their rate?
I think it was 12th in the league.
So
maybe.
Yeah.
11th.
So I just they what?
I think it may be, let's see. Actually, according to the Rivals, eighth in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, that's not going to cut it. I mean, you got a tough situation there to
people. Coach Harsin right there.
He was trying to get me to go be the offensive coach. But the only thing that I would say about that Seattle guy is you hope that he brings Wilson with him at quarterback. If he brings him, they got a shot. But Bo Nix is leaving. I don't know if Bigby's going to stay. I mean, it's just if you look at any program, even compared to Vanderbilt, they're trending up compared to what Auburn is to me. Personnel-wise, they're going to be worse. They're losing some good players to the portal. Even some of their offensive linemen with a year left are leaving. So this guy's in some serious – to me, I don't know that he's in over his head or what it is, but I think they've got some real problems, don't you, Brent?
Real quick, they're playing the game at Protective Stadium, which is the new UAB stadium. It's not at Legion Field.
That's a break for them. That's a break.
But the only note I wrote for this and for Auburn, outside of just Tank having his fun every year of being in the portal and then not, is Brian Harsin going to be the coach at this time next year? Because I don't know that that's the case.
Yeah, I think that's
I don't know what they're going to do in the vaccination. I mean, what's he got, like 20 days left or something? I mean,
no, there was an injunction against that. So for the foreseeable future, that policy doesn't apply anymore.
I just wish he'd look in the camera when he's talking to the people. I mean, I can't figure the guy out. I mean, he's got good people skills and he talks good, but he always looked like he doesn't want to look at you. I mean, I don't understand it.
Last team to discuss, and quite an interesting one, between LSU and Florida, the transition. LSU 6-6 overall, 3-5 in the league. Ed Orgeron out. Brian Kelly in, which still sounds a little bit weird when I say it. The Tax Act Texas Bowl against Kansas State.
Yeah, you look at Brian Kelly, that's a home run hire any way you look at it. I mean, the guy has a tremendous record, and he started recruiting like you got to recruit at Notre Dame, because you look all those years Notre Dame weren't getting many guys drafted. Now they got them going left and right. So his big deals, who's he going to be, who's his coordinator's going to be, getting the right kinds of guys. You got Frank Wilson in there who's going to help him recruiting. But, you can get somebody in McDonald's down Rouge, and if they can speak English and talk at all, they're going to recruit at LSU. I mean, you're going to recruit at LSU no matter what. So now you just got to get their squad numbers back because they've been so depleted on the portal and kids just going pro and all that. But Kansas State's a tough out. I mean, they play that offense where the quarterback does those counter runs and all. They go for it on fourth down, and it'll be a tough deal for Kansas State going against that defense, though, because LSU all of a sudden is selling the ranch. That's the way they're playing. They're just getting after you. I don't know who's going to be coaching for LSU or who's going to be playing or who's going to be playing quarterback. If Nussmeier plays, he gives up a whole year because, he can't play but in so many games and still get your red shirt year in. And I see where Brennan's coming back, but he's not going to be able to play in the game, I wouldn't think, with that injury. But Kansas State, to me, has got to be the favorite in this game.
I would agree. And I think, like you said, with Kelly, he's won wherever he's been. Like, he wins. Like, the dude he just wins wherever he goes, whether it's Cincinnati, whether it was whatever, I think it was Central Michigan that he was before he went to Cincinnati. And, he's just a good football coach. And now if you put that with the players that you can typically get at LSU, as long as you don't turn it into a dumpster fire, I think they're going to be just fine. And he wants to compete for sort of the end. I think he knows that. I almost think he felt, hey, at Notre Dame, I'm capped at getting in the playoffs. I want to beat these guys. I want to, get to that, elite level and go win the national championship. And I think he can do that at LSU. It's just a matter of finding the right guys and finding the right quarterback. And I think he's already got one. He's signed the 5-star QB in Walker Howard. So he's on his way.
Coach had mentioned,
I think Kelly to me is the biggest threat that Nick Saban has in the SEC West right now. I mean, even over Jimbo, because I just think they'll make a move really big time at LSU.
Coach had mentioned Miles Brennan, and so Brian asked on YouTube and Facebook what we thought of him pulling his name out of the portal to stay at LSU. Quickly, I'll just tell you that, it seems like Brian Kelly is doing really quick assessments and pretty much telling his players, hey, you got a shot to play for me or you don't, and they're making their portal decisions based off of that. Miles Brennan, when he's been healthy, is a really good quarterback. So I would not be stunned if he was the starter for LSU next year and was really good. But he just hasn't been able to stay healthy, and that's why LSU has. And Max Johnson added a running element that Brennan doesn't have. So we'll see what Brian Kelly does with that. Brent, you've seen as much as I have, but a lot of potential with that kid.
And always graded out well in the PFF grading, so he's played well, and when he's had the opportunity, but like you said, just can't stay on the field.
Yep. And hey, this is our last Around the League for this season. We'll be doing some podcasts in the off season, but it just won't be on such a regular cadence. I've really enjoyed doing this with you guys every week, and it's all made possible by Connor Grading and Landscaping. Go check them out, support, and say that Jim Donnan and Brent Rollins and Dane Young told you about Connor Grading and Landscaping and what they can do for your yard. So that's close to 15, 20 shows. I don't know, but we talk about every team in the SEC every week. That's a lot of content for our audiences. And Coach, can't thank you enough for making time for it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Glad we were able to do this season-ending thing here. And I hate for football to be over, but hopefully we got about 3-4 more weeks here, and we'll see the Dogs get all the way and get it going.
If you're not subscribed to this YouTube channel, you should be. Make sure you do that. And Brent, we will be doing some more Film Don't Lie as we preview Michigan here in the coming week or so as we get around holidays. So to everyone out there, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. We'll be back with more content on our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. This